Hey everyone, Jackson with Saints in the South here, bringing to you interview number 8, where we interview Elder Jacob Hatcher. Elder Hatcher is currently serving a full-time mission. And interesting thing about Elder Hatcher is that he started out as a proselyting missionary and he is finishing up as a service missionary. What's the difference between the two? Well, Elder Hatcher, he will provide some of those details. He also provides some details on why the transition took place. He goes into detail on some of the struggles and anxieties and everything that he experiences. And he exemplifies some great faith, great courage, and I believe some wisdom beyond his years. So I believe you're going to enjoy this interview a lot. If you've ever wondered or don't know anything about a service mission, please watch this interview. Please share this interview. I'm going to leave some descriptions or a link in the description below, and that will provide more answers. If you know anyone that has a strong desire to serve the Lord, but don't feel quite up to the challenge of serving a full-time proselyting mission, a service mission provides a wonderful opportunity to continue to serve or to serve the Lord, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, what have you. There are many opportunities out there to serve as a missionary of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so Elder Hatcher goes into some detail on this. So please share this with friends and family, and please like and subscribe to our channel, and please leave any comments. We would greatly appreciate it. But we'll go ahead and jump into the interview. Hope you enjoy. We are Saints in the South, your source for gospel growth and good times. All right, everyone, we've got Elder Jacob Hatcher with us today. So thank you for coming out and sitting down with me here for a little bit.
Happy to.
So you are currently serving a mission.
That's
right?
correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. How far in are you?
That's a good question. I think about 20 months in at this point.
Okay, about 20 months. Wow.
20 months. I don't know. I think I'm ending in the end of November. So
okay, yeah.
however long that is.
Gotcha.
No, I'm at least 18.
Yeah.
I think the thing says I'm about 4 months and some days
Gotcha.
left. So 19, 20.
Well, very good. So what I figured we'd do is maybe start out with maybe a little bit of your upbringing and everything, and then your kind of maybe process on how you decided and what all went into you deciding to serve a mission, and whether you ever had any thoughts about not serving and so forth. So if you would just kind of take us through there.
Okay, sure. So I was born on Fort Benning to my mom and my dad. My dad was in the Army, so he actually shot on the Olympic Army marksmanship team.
Okay.
And so I was born there during that time, and they divorced pretty shortly afterwards. So within about a year, they were never sealed.
Okay.
And so I grew up basically with my mom as a single mom, but they were pretty amicable in their divorce, and so I was regularly visiting with my father, and
that's a huge thing. That's good.
Definitely.
That's really good.
It is just a total difference from everybody else in church that I remember. Basically, a lot of the time, when talking about the family, it was sort of just this weird thing that I didn't really understand how it applied to me, because it just didn't really seem to. And I remember having questions about, my dad's salvation and things like that. He's inactive.
Okay.
And so growing up for the longest time, it was just me and my mom. And we moved around in houses a good bit. We lived in Jessup, Georgia, so it's like a pretty small little city. Then we lived in Tampa for a little while before she remarried to Kenny. And since then, I lived in Waycross as well. And we've lived in Waycross. And yeah. Okay. And so growing up, I just was raised in the church, and it was normal enough for me. My grandparents, all my grandparents, were pretty positive about the church. Even my dad's parents, who aren't members, had good experiences with the church, and they never said anything against it or even really necessarily about it. So it just was kind of, normal to me
Right.
to be a member. But at some point when I was like a teenager, I really was just not interested. And so definitely until probably my senior year of high school, I had no plans of serving a mission.
Okay.
Whatsoever. Like I had no interest in it. And I've struggled with social anxiety and like depression for about as long as I can remember.
Okay.
So it was definitely something of like, I just didn't think that it was the right place for me to be going out on the street or like talking to people about stuff. I was just like, that sounds terrifying and horrifying. So I definitely wasn't interested in that until much later on. And pretty last minute was I willing to.
Okay. All right. So, you'd mentioned earlier about thinking that as far as like the eternal families and everything, not really applying to you and everything because of your mom and dad's divorce. Did that have anything to do with maybe your desire or lack of desire to serve a mission or anything like that, or was there maybe beliefs of the gospel or anything like that you struggled with or anything?
I think there were definitely. I think for me there were different times that I had those two different worries.
Okay.
So when I was younger and was being raised in the church and sort of just took it for granted.
Right.
For the most part, I wasn't really actually bothered by the fact that my mom and my dad didn't live together. It didn't bother me too much that I was different in some ways. But I remember at least once kind of thinking about it, suddenly realizing, wait, how does this work? Like, is my dad going to heaven?
Right.
Of course, I love my dad. And so, that's a big question to ask is, like, what's going on with his salvation? And I think actually that might have been what kind of led into other problems later on, where I was just like, this is totally kind of different from what's going on. But I mean, since my mom and Kenny each got married, I actually have been sealed to Kenny.
Okay.
And stuff. And so and my dad gave permission for that. My dad's always been supportive of my
Very good.
of my existence within the church, my membership, and he's never revoked his membership. He's still a member, but just inactive.
Gotcha.
And not practicing.
Well, I think that says a lot about him as well. Him being supportive in that way and in that manner, and I think especially with the whole adoption and sealing and everything to Kenny,
definitely,
and your mom there. So that's pretty huge. So what was it that started changing your mind on deciding to serve a mission?
I would say in the first place, probably when I was, before I was a priest, before I was like 16 years old, I was really very lost in all sorts of ways. I mean, I was very anxious, very depressed, and it was about the time when I could drive myself places. I had a driver's license, I had a car. I was a priest, so I had the responsibility to get the sacrament ready. My faith wasn't super strong, but I was happy to do what I was told was right, and I wanted to fulfill that. I wanted to, even if I couldn't say that there was a God or specific things about that, I still had that kind of hope in some senses, and I still wanted to fulfill people's expectations, and I still wanted to do that. Maybe not the purest intentions, but definitely was what drove me. And so in that, being able to take responsibility for my own actions and for my own choices really, I think, strengthened my agency. And that's where then it kind of all blossomed out of, where it was this thing of, I'm responsible for getting there on time. I'm responsible for what I'm doing, and I'm responsible, versus it's somebody else's fault if I'm late. It's somebody else's fault if something's not happening. And over time that morphed into really developing, like a hope, a wish, and faith that could grow.
I think that's really kind of being maybe wise beyond your years, so to speak, to even though you may have had questions about certain things, beliefs, doctrinal points and everything, but you still wanted to fulfill what you knew would be expected in your duties, even though, and I think you doing that is perfectly fine and acceptable. And, as we see in the scriptures and in other examples of individuals in life, working through different faith challenges, so to speak, I think is key. Was it Elder Uchtdorf that said to doubt your doubts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think whether you realize you were doing that or not, I think that's maybe subconsciously maybe what you were doing.
Yeah, and in some ways, and it's hard to look back at that time because, of course, it was just like a totally different mindset about things. Because I just remember, basically, it was a sort of thing where nothing could be believed, almost like there was nothing that I could possibly believe in, and yet at the same time, I wasn't ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I wasn't ready to throw everything away and completely abandon it. To some extent, like I didn't make my mom force me to go to church, and she wouldn't have forced me to go to church, but I got ready, even if I was late, and even if I was, not doing it very happily or with a smile on my face. I was doing it. Like, I mean, in the end, I was actually doing it, and it's sort of funny. Like, now that I think about it, it's like, in some ways, I can see that being the definition of faith. It's like the thing that motivates you to act. Right. And so if you're acting on it, you do have faith, even if you don't realize it, even if you don't say the words, even if it's hard for you to say that you know something or that you believe something, you're doing it. So what does that say about what you think? Exactly.
Right. Do you think maybe some of your concerns, what kind of outside influence was there in maybe some of your concerns and doubts and everything, or was it all kind of maybe internal questions that were maybe natural to you as an individual?
I think it was definitely both. Okay. I think there was a lot of media, like skeptic sort of media and atheist media that I was very into at certain points, where I was constantly watching videos about, disproving this or just like stating non-belief and things like that, where I was just fascinated by it and fascinated by these like philosophical ideas of like, really high standards of proof and things like that, where it's like, how can you know anything?
Right.
And it's just this sort of obsession about being right about things and not claiming, because I didn't want to say I knew something that I didn't know properly. Yeah. Like I was very specific about, and I am still pretty specific about how I use the word know, because I don't like to say things. I don't like to say I know things if I don't feel like I know it. Yeah. And I don't like to say, I like to be specific in that way.
Yeah. And that's a common phrase in the church, as I know, right?
Yeah. And that's just alienating. It was, at least I remember, I was just like, how do you know? Right. Because for me, like, the standards to know something, like, I don't even know so many things that you take for granted. I felt like I was like, I don't even know if I would say that I know something very basic, if I've never observed it myself. Like, if you pressed me on it, I would be like, well, I don't know, I just heard. Right. Yeah. I don't know, but I think it makes sense.
I don't know when it was, but at some point I realized that whenever I say I know, what I'm basing that on is our spiritual feelings, right?
Right.
What I know I felt, right? Because I haven't seen the Savior, right? I wasn't around when Joseph Smith, had the first vision or anything like that.
Right.
What I know is what the Spirit has confirmed to me.
Exactly.
And everything, and so I think that's what people are saying, whether they realize it or not. They know what they felt about those things.
Definitely, and that's the sort of thing where I was just thinking about this, even just on my way over here. Was like I was thinking about those experiences that I have had now, where I'm like, I've definitely felt things, and so then does that, like, I can know that I've felt things, right? Right. When I'm being really precise with it, it's like. Just because I don't know what it is about me, but I just don't like, at least for me, it's not truthful. It feels like I'm like, just saying it to be able to say it because everybody else says it. Right. So I feel like I should say to know that I know things.
I think that's that's the intellectual side of us, right?
Yeah.
That's trying to come through, that that, the couch or whatever, I know that couch is right there, right?
Yeah.
Because I can see it, I can touch it,
Right,
I can feel it,
right.
I can sit on it and everything. But yeah, so take me through the process of really kind of deciding to, okay, I am going to serve a mission.
Mm-hmm. So it was in that sort of thing of realizing that taking on responsibilities was the way to grow, and taking on challenges.
Okay, yeah.
So my first wish to go on a mission really was in that very sort of sense of like, I knew it was going to be something that was going to be hard, and I knew it was going to be a time of growth. So it'd be good for me to do it. And that was my first real inclination. That was the first like seed that was planted of like, this would be good for me.
Right.
And even if I didn't know if it was going to be good for other people or the world or something like that, I knew, okay, this is probably going to be good for me. And I know this is, again, something that people say is good. So I want to do what is good.
Okay.
In a very direct sense. And
so you weren't even really looking at it as a spiritual good. It was just kind of good in general, like maybe a good experience, kind of getting out of the house, having to rely more on yourself and on experiences, and getting to know other, maybe getting over some of those anxieties or that you've been experiencing. Was it some of that?
I think so. And then that was like the first seed of it. And then as well, as I developed more spiritually, because I think I even realized that when I would say that I had no interest in it, I was still sort of thinking, but it'd probably be good to do something that's really hard.
Right.
It'd be probably good for me to not just be a hermit, and not be an agoraphobe, right, but actually go out and do this, and that would prove something. And then that developed over time. But then as well, the spiritual aspect of it developed over time of as well, searching for that ability to say that I know, or searching for spiritual experiences, right, and that really being a pathway into it, something that people talked about a lot. And then as well came, and really the thing that clutched it in was believing that I could actually do good for others in doing a mission.
Yeah.
Because if that wasn't possible, then maybe I would have still done it, but I don't think I would have.
Okay.
I think I would have said, I can go to college and get an experience that's similar.
Right.
I can go and do something else, or I can, backpack or something if I want to go find myself.
Right.
Yeah. But
well, this way you kind of, and having served a mission, serving a mission goes a long way in helping an individual find themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, do what you're talking about, and that's doing good, serving others and everything, which goes a long way into finding yourself. When you forget about yourself and go serve others and put others first, you really begin to find yourself, so to speak. And the other thing that you said a little earlier, I think, which again is something that's maybe wise beyond your years, I think, is realizing that going out and doing something that's hard is good for you. And I fully believe in that.
Yeah, well. I mean, I had help in it as well, of course. It's not like something that I figured out on my own. It was again something, that you hear. I mean, the most common metaphor, of course, is like exercise.
Right.
You have to like kind of rip and tear a little bit.
That's right. You're speaking my language when you're talking about exercise.
Yeah, I know my audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. So you put in your papers. And you get your mission call, and so where were you called to serve, and what was your anticipation of that, and thoughts of where you were called to serve?
Well, here's a little adjustment that I'll make.
Okay.
Which is interesting, is that actually, and I read this. I gave a talk this last Sunday. This is why I wasn't in
okay, right.
And our ward was in Brunswick, and in that I talked about in the mission call, because first sentence, at least nowadays, first sentence of the mission call is, "You're hereby called as a missionary, or to be a missionary of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints," period, line break, talks about your purpose, and it talks about what you'll be doing, how you're expected to serve, and then it talks about you are assigned to this so-and-so mission. So even called to, a lot of people think about called to, I was called to this place, but really it's an assignment. And just like in COVID, how a lot of proselyting missionaries got reassigned to various different areas, maybe never even got to their original assignment.
Right.
It really is an assignment and it is made with, of course, all of the inspiration that is available, but it's not the same as the calling. And so in the same exact way, service missionaries, when they receive their call, is able to look at one of their calls. It's the exact same wording. You're hereby called to serve as a missionary of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, period. And then it has a different purpose because it has the service missionary purpose.
Right.
And then you're assigned to labor in the service mission of so-and-so place.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. I still have my mission call, so I'd be curious.
I would be curious as well.
I need to go back and look at that and see what the difference is, because I know that they started out with you're called to serve in the, like for me, the
Definitely.
Nevada Las Vegas mission.
Definitely, and I think it might even be just a difference. Even nowadays, so there could be a real difference, especially because of all the reassignments.
Right.
And so there's an understanding that really, almost to a certain extent, God has taken the wheel,
Right.
and sort of saying, people will be serving where I need them to serve. And maybe that means that they'll be serving in two different places at two different times. And maybe that means, they'll start out in America and then they'll go over abroad and then they'll end up back in America in a different place. Who knows?
There you go. I'm pretty sure it's Elder Bednar who talked a lot about not getting caught up on where you're called to serve.
Exactly.
And that everyone is called to labor in the Lord's vineyard, right? Mm-hmm. But like you said, it's an assignment to different places. Because I'll be honest, and I hate admitting this. But when I opened my mission call, I had a little bit of disappointment. Mm-hmm. I was called to serve in the Las Vegas mission. Part of my disappointment was because I had an uncle that had served in the Las Vegas mission. So I didn't feel like I was being called to my mission, right? I felt like I was being kind of called to his mission, where somebody in the family had already served. And then secondly, I really wanted to go overseas and everything and stuff. So admittedly, I was disappointed. However, when I got there and served, I knew that's where I was assigned to serve. So I appreciate you.
And if you fulfill your calling there, honestly, I think it's fair to say you were called to that. Even then, and maybe it was your calling to be there at that time, right? But then in a more specific sense, and then I think assignment is a good language to use because of all the difficulties, right. even visas, even without COVID, visa issues can keep someone out, and that's that doesn't mean that somehow you're being unfaithful. That doesn't mean that you are not fulfilling your calling.
Absolutely.
And sort of things like that. I think the switch in language really helps out with that culture of how am I going to get there? How I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Because so many reassigned missionaries, of course, then kind of were like laissez-faire. They're like, this isn't even my calling. Right. This is fake. I'm sure you can imagine just I belong in Las Vegas, but I'm stuck here in Georgia.
That's right. Yeah.
Whatever.
Wow. So where were you assigned?
So I was assigned to the Germany Berlin mission.
Okay.
And along the way, before I even left, I was reassigned. I got a reassignment to Chicago, Illinois. Didn't end up going there. Instead, we were taken to Great Britain to quarantine before going into Germany, and then we got stuck there. So then we were reassigned. The group of missionaries that I was with got reassigned among the British missions for about 2 weeks, and then we were taken through Croatia to Germany to follow the laws of quarantining and stuff, and to get in. And then
because you were called in the thick of the whole COVID situation and everything, when a lot of quarantining and everything was going on, and that was right in the middle of all that. Okay.
Yeah, and so we managed to get into Britain right before the new, I think it was the Delta at the time, the new Delta variant was hitting Great Britain, so they locked down. We ended up quarantined through Christmas and New Year's. Okay. In Great Britain, and so. That was interesting, to say the least. Christmas Day, we're like, our quarantine is over. Maybe, hopefully, we'll get allowed to go outside more. But then the new variant meant no. You get to go outside less now. Wow. You finish your 14-day quarantine, so actually you need to stay inside more than ever before.
Man, how hard was that?
It was pretty hard. It was definitely difficult because there just was not much to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
you can just a bunch of.
Well, first of all, there's only so much you can do as a missionary, right?
Yes.
You're already limited anyway.
Yes, you're already limited, and we're all new.
Yeah.
Some of us had been in reassignments in America, in the States and stuff, and so they had some experience with missionary work. In my room, we had one of those, and so there was 3. It was, maybe the size of this room was our apartment in Temple housing. 4 bunk beds set up, or 2 sets of bunk beds set up. And we're, sleeping in tight quarters. One of us has experience being a missionary for about 6 months. And the other 3 totally new, no idea what we're doing, not having it. And the stateside missionaries just don't know how to do Facebook work either as much. Didn't know how to. And in Europe, that was the thing. It was a lot of it was online because of how much more stringent quarantine rules were and COVID rules were. Just outside was not as viable.
Right.
Generally, and so Facebook work was very, very popular, and it was like the mode of proselyting in a lot of ways. And we just didn't know how to do it.
Wow.
And we just didn't know. And of course, when we don't have a real assignment, or not a real assignment, when we don't have an active assignment, it's hard to know if we're even supposed to. Like, where are we supposed to proselyte to?
Right.
Where do we have any authority to proselyte in?
Right.
We just get to talk to people. I mean, that's chill, I guess. But
that's an interesting dilemma that you mentioned. Is having because you're not in your assigned area, right?
No,
you're not. Are you up under? And you're not even in your mission boundaries or anything.
No,
right?
no.
So,
At that time, we're out of the country. We're out of our own home country. We're out of
and you're out of your assigned country.
Out of our assigned country, and we're just, we're just
chilling, hanging
waiting
out.
in faith that we're gonna get there, and that somebody else knows what's going on, and it's not us.
Wow.
And it was a constantly changing plan, and it was really amazing. I know it was, in a lot of ways, it was awesome because of seeing just how much care they put into each and every one of us. Like, they knew us by name. The travel department knew us by name and was making sure and doing all that they could to get us to our assignments.
Okay.
And to get us into the countries that we were supposed to go to. And that was really awesome. And especially, in a lot of ways, it was hard to figure out what to do, but at the same time, you're like, well, I guess this is part of the plan, maybe, or something. Right. It feels like you're like, I remember one of my roommates was concerned. He was like, are we just not faithful enough? Because about half of our group got in, and the other half got left behind.
Oh,
so
wow.
we're the half that got left behind. What does that say? And so I remember he was talking about, he was having a kind of a dilemma about that in his head. But for me, it was pretty easy to just be like, this is the plan. If I'm stuck here, I'm stuck here. I don't get to do. There's no agency for me.
Right,
in this.
Right. It's funny how we do that when things start going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of start backtracking and like, okay, what have I done wrong?
Yeah.
Right, where have I messed up? To receive this punishment.
Exactly.
So eventually you finally get into
mm-hmm.
to Germany there. You got any? I don't know if you have any missionary stories or anything like that you would like to share or elaborate
mm-hmm.
on, and how your service went.
I mean, it was really hard. I mean, I knew it was going to be hard for me, especially. I remember my trainer was a German as well, and he had been serving for about 6 months, and he had been serving in the same area where I then came into.
Okay.
And up until that point, once we were in our companionship at our zone conference, it was announced that we would start doing street contacting again, which is to say that they hadn't done street contacting yet. And my trainer had not done street contacting before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was new for both of us.
Okay.
And both of us very introverted.
Okay.
He was German. And so he talked about even, kind of having the same, it's a funny disappointment to have to us, I think, to think, okay, you were called to Germany, and that seems kind of nice and fancy to us.
Right.
But of course, for a German, that's not quite so nice and fancy.
Right.
And so he was talking about, when he was first called, he was like, gosh, I know the Germans. Like, I know my people.
Right.
This is going to be interesting, But we went out, and it was really hard for both of us to try and talk to people and break out of our bubbles, because we were both definitely introverted types and not really ones to step over to kind of be loud and sound the warning cry. We were not those types of people in a general sense. But we struggled with it, and we started to make some progress. We had a friend who was really awesome. He actually did he? I can't remember if he was gonna get baptized recently. I can't remember if he. I think he did, and his niece who he taught as well. And so we were meeting with them. They were from Ghana, and it was really amazing. And we had some awesome experiences. I had some awesome experiences with my trainer, and going forward, I mean, awesome experiences over and over again, and really amazing time spent with investigators when we could have investigators. That was the other hard thing, was just in a lot of ways, like, we just felt like a little empty, especially the ones who had reassignments in stateside missions. Kind of, all of a sudden your numbers, you're used to having like 7 lessons a week, and it's hard to get a couple lessons a week, if even. It's really quite the grind. But we met some amazing people, and it was just awesome. I remember in Bielefeld, we would walk through parks a lot, because people there actually do just sit in parks and hang out. It's crazy for us Americans, I think, to think about, but it's not loitering. It's just what the benches are for. Yeah. So they would just be sitting there. You'd walk up and you talk to them. And I remember we were walking through, and we were just headed home. And so but one of my companions saw this guy, and so we walked up to him and we talked to him, and we ended up teaching him for a while longer. He was oh gosh, what was it? He was Kurdish. He was Kurdish, and I think Hasidic. And he was just a really awesome guy. And we had some amazingly spiritual conversations with him, because I think he, to me, really embodied, like, we believe all things, we hope all things. He was so ready to, he had so much hope for there being a God, and for there being a good God, and for there being a power of God acting in the world today. It wasn't this sort of very intellectual, philosophical sort of thing. It was like, very much so experiencing things in the way that you read about people experiencing, even in church history. Like experiencing the influence of spirits, and recognizing that as the influence of spirits, not just your own feelings, right, but actually experiencing them in that very visceral way. And it was an amazing thing for me, because he was such, in some ways it was almost conflicting, because he seemed so much like me, but at the same time saw things in a way that I'd never really seen things before. Because even, I struggle sometimes to understand things in a sort of spiritual language, or through a spiritual lens at times, but he just did. That was just how he was, and he loved hearing about the gospel and things like that.
So was that with your trainer companion, or
no? That was later on.
Later on
gotcha. in Bielefeld, we were in a 4-man apartment with the zone leaders, which was just crazy. One of them was also German, and very, very much to the stereotypical orderly person, where it's like everything has to be a specific way, and kind of that stereotypical German perfectionist, very sort of a thing.
So how did the language come for you?
For me, I had learned it in high school. I had taken German in high school, and I had done well enough. Actually, I did 3-week MTC, native MTC, in German. And so for me, it was a matter of getting used to speaking it constantly, which is definitely a challenge in and of itself. Right. The headaches that come from a zone conference in German, I can't tell you. Like, listening to it for 3 hours straight is just a totally different ballgame. Wow. But for me, it came pretty easily to be able to actually communicate my thoughts. The main problem was having thoughts. Right. I found, which was definitely something that you just had to rely on the Spirit for, to know what you were supposed to say. Even though I had language, I still needed to struggle with having that influence of the Spirit in what I said, and then as well, being able to talk to people in the first place. I mean, who cares if you can talk? So so it's almost a double translation, where you're trying to figure out what the Spirit is telling you, right? And now you got and that's probably coming through in English, and now you got to turn around and try and figure out and spit it out in German. Exactly, exactly.
Pretty big process to go to be serving a foreign mission speaking.
Definitely. Well, and I pretty quickly, I mean, from the MTC, I was, and even now, I kind of still prefer reading the scriptures in German. So I was trying
That's
to get
good.
the spiritual language. I was trying to get all of it in my head, because that was something that you don't learn in school.
Right,
German
right.
is how to talk about God and how to talk about covenants and things like
Right.
that. So that was definitely the biggest thing that I had to learn was words for the church.
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
And words for spirituality. But then once I got that, it was still a thing of just being in connection with the Spirit. I think it's always been something that comes kind of difficult for me, and I have to really kind of put a lot of effort into, is to be spiritually aware, because a lot of times I think I'm a pretty introspective person, but it all kind of goes through some sort of a filter of secularizing it and just being like, so I feel upset right now, or I feel unsafe right now, but whether I naturally would say I felt a prompting or not. It's been something that I have to work for, to recognize promptings.
Yes.
When I get them, and then to act on them differently from emotions,
Right.
and recognize them and do something different for them than when I just feel unsafe. Because of course, with anxiety, you feel unsafe all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So take me through that a little bit. So up to this point, have you been struggling with that anxiety and it, as far as it worsening and so forth, and kind of coming to a point where, like, okay, I've got to do something here about it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the anxiety still existed.
Okay.
It's not like at the beginning it wasn't there, but it was definitely, for me, it was much more a challenge to be overcome. But then over time, it wasn't even that the anxiety grew. The anxiety actually in some ways went away over time. But then the problem was that it was just sort of this flattening. I remember the time when I think it was the most of a red flag for me was we were with some members. We were with a member family going to a fair. It was this fun thing, and I recognized that it was fun, but I wasn't having fun.
Right.
Like, I wasn't experiencing happiness or joy. And in that moment, I was like, this is not okay.
Right.
Like, this is not sustainable, because, it's one thing if I feel that the butterflies in my stomach and I feel the tightness in my chest while doing something that's unnatural to me, but instead I was totally flat. And that was where I was, like, I could force a smile. I could force myself to act as though I was happy.
Right.
But it was nothing. And it wasn't even necessarily like sadness. It was just this nothing sort of a feeling. And that grew and that consumed so much to the point where I, the only emotions I would necessarily feel were extreme negatives.
Okay.
And that was sort of what ended up happening. And so then I was talking on and off with the mission president's wife, who was a therapist.
Okay.
And I was reaching out to, then I spoke with my mission president, of course, and I spoke with the area counselor. So they had a Europe area counselor as well, that you could talk to. But it just ended up being this sort of a thing where it was actually my mission president who put forth, like, hey, have you considered a service mission? Because he had actually worked with a missionary before and transitioned them into a service mission. And so that was something that my service mission leader has talked about, where it was this amazing thing, because mission presidents never know about service missions.
Okay.
And never know how to do it. But my mission president actually did know how to do it and brought it up to me, and it took probably months. It took at least a month of talking with him, and a month after he mentioned it, that I even began to really consider it.
Okay.
And yeah.
So, all right. So, a couple follow-up questions with the anxiety. Does it kind of become almost paralyzing, so to speak, to where it really kind of prevents you from functioning in the manner that you should be functioning as far as a missionary and different parts of life? Okay.
Definitely. I mean, it's for me, I experience it a lot of times as this horrible sort of trap where you feel restless, but you can't do anything.
Okay.
So you're like paralyzed, whether like sometimes with a sort of paranoia I've experienced, where it's like, I feel like I'm being watched, not like by the government, but just like by my companion, who is, yes, watching me, and they are interacting with me. People do see me. And so then but I feel the pressure of people's eyes on me.
Okay.
But it's this sort of restlessness that's like, I have way too much energy,
right?
But I have, and it's sort of, if you can imagine, like choice paralysis. You know, like when you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
like
yeah.
a million choices,
That's right. Yeah.
and you don't even know where to start. It's like that, but with actions, you know, and there's infinite ways that you can act in a moment, but then which one do you choose? And that's the paralysis.
Yeah.
Is that just sort of being stuck in that no space where you're not doing anything?
And are you, is some of it almost a fear of making the wrong choice? Like, does that have anything to do?
Oh, definitely,
Okay.
definitely. And a lot of it has to do too, at least for me, with sort of paying attention to how people will perceive me.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
And how people will judge me to a large extent. And so, you know, it is just this sort of thing that's, yeah.
So
paralyzing.
all right. So that was going to be another question, was as you kind of start contemplating, you know, what are you going to do about, you know, you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
You know, you're experiencing these high anxiety levels and everything. You know, if I go home, if I come home early, what are people going to think of me, or what are they going to say? So is all that going through your mind?
Definitely,
Okay.
100%. And as well, it's, you know, with that same thing of trying to do a hard thing, I had made this commitment. I'd made this thing in my head where it's like, I am going to give my all to do this. And then when it's not working out, well, I'm not going to acknowledge that, right? Like, I'm not going to let that win. And so it's just this stubbornness, this pride. And I think part of it, honestly, too, was, you know, I had struggled with anxiety before. I was on an anti-anxiety medication before I left, and we put that in the papers. And so I knew there was a possibility, and I didn't know how much of a possibility there would have been at the time, but there's a possibility that they would say, you know, you're released from proselytizing mission service, but you can serve a service mission if you'd like to. That they would offer that.
Right.
And when I didn't receive that, then it's like, you know, that was, you know, of course, this thing of like, okay, well, then I'm going to do the hard thing.
Right.
And I'm going to do it. You know, I'm expected to serve 24 months, so I'm going to try, at least. You know, I'm at least going to try my hardest. I'm either going to fall apart and burn, or that's kind of what I did to some extent, or I'm going to get through it. And it really was this element of pride. I think it's like this ugly sort of a pride that I wasn't willing to accept the idea that that the plan could possibly be more complicated for me.
Well, I'm going to call that some righteous pride right there.
Yeah,
I don't know if there is such a thing. But again, your intentions are on the good side, right?
Definitely,
which is what you talked about earlier. And so you're man, that's high props to you on really you know, pushing forward with going, you know, putting yourself out there. You know, we just it made me think of course, we're studying in Esther this coming week with Come Follow Me, right? And she was placed in having to do a hard thing, and in the scriptures she says, "If I perish, I perish." So it made me think about that whenever you said, "If I crash and burn, I crash and burn." You know, I mean, I'm gonna go out trying, and everything. So, all right, so you talked with your mission president, area council, and I'm assuming you probably talked with your mom. About kind of what was going on and everything. So ultimately, how do you come to the decision of, okay, I'm gonna make this transition and finish my mission as a service missionary?
Well, so that's actually one of the experiences that I can look at as a real spiritual experience in really no other terms. But we were able to go during my time in Germany. Actually, I was able to go to both German temples. So I was able to go to the Frankfurt Temple at the beginning of when I first got there, even though it's outside of our mission. We were quarantined in Friedrichsburg, which is where the Frankfurt Temple is located, and we were on literally the temple worker. We were in the temple worker. How do you say the temple worker apartments?
Okay.
The temple housing there. We were at temple worker apartments. So we were in temple housing there, and so we were able to go through there, and then near the end of my time in Germany, in December, we were able to go again but we were able to go to the Freiburg Temple, which is within East Germany. Was where it was originally, or it was East Germany when it was built there.
Right.
At the very least. And so, going there, I went there with that question, and the Zone conference before that had been about preparing for the temple and being able to go, because it's, kind of once in a mission for me, twice in a mission, but once in a mission kind of experience to be able to go to a temple, especially as a whole mission. We were going together. And
let me pause you. How long have you been out at this point?
So I've been out about a year.
Okay. All right.
I've been out a year right out, basically. And so, I go there with this question, and I talked with my mission president, and he's, asked, okay, figure out the answer if you should stay or if you should go home, and not necessarily even if you should serve a service mission, because basically what he was talking about is on the mission, you're just not going to be able to get the same resources for help. So do you need the help? So do you need to go home, or or is God telling you to stay? Right. And so I went and I found my answer. And then also as well, part of probably the spiritual experience was as well at the end, with the prayer circle, and that you shouldn't have hard feelings within the prayer circle. And my mission president is in the prayer circle, and I'm thinking about my mission now, having come to the realization that I need to go home. And so I decided in that moment, I'm not going to have hard feelings about it. And so that's when I went into the prayer circle, deciding I'm not going to have hard feelings. I'm going to forgive. That this is a really hard experience, a really in some ways what would be a really terrible experience, or could be a really terrible experience. I'm going to accept it, and it's going to be a good experience. Wow,
that's that's huge, man. That positive outlook, and really taking the experiences, your personal experiences, for what they are, and it being something that's between you and the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I think we could all learn a ton from that, because I think that's that's what life has a lot to do with. We all go through our own personal challenges, our own personal experiences, and how we choose to interact in those experiences with the help of the Lord is really where that true growth comes from. So, thanks for sharing that. So then you tell your mission president that you've got the answer.
Right, when we get out, and so we're having a bit of kind of a conference together as a couple zones together. And I walk up to him and I'm like, hey, so I did, get the answer, and the answer is I need to go home. And he said, he said something to the effect of, I was hoping to keep you, sort of a thing.
Right.
And I said, well, it looks like it's not in your favor or whatever. And he's like, so how quickly do you need to go? Basically.
Right.
And I said, well, you don't have to get me a flight right now. Just however it makes sense.
Just go ahead and kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah. And he was like, so can I keep you for another month? And I'm like, well, do you need another month? Cause I think I need to be home.
Right.
But so I ended up being there for another about 2 or 3 weeks as he set up the paperwork and set up the travel and things like that. And so I ended up staying in Berlin with the APs and the office elders at the mission office, which is, near Berlin airport then as well. So then it works out for when I need to go. And it really just ends up, in some ways it was again kind of the bookend, the same experience again, because we ended up being quarantined when the APs got coronavirus, and so we were stuck in the apartment for 2 weeks, and we weren't allowed to leave once again. And so it was kind of this perfect little symmetry, the circle coming back around, and then I left, and it was about 24 hours of travel to get back, which is probably the craziest portal to just travel through. Is you're in Germany, and then a long, crazy, mind-bending 24 hours later, you're back in America, and you go, and I think, were you there when I got back at the Brunswick airport?
Yeah.
And nobody's wearing masks, which is insane, because mask mandates were still high in Germany, and still existed back then. And then we go to, me and my mom and Joey and Kenny go to a Denny's, again, without masks and without having to prove vaccination either, which is something that you had to do in Germany. And And then, the next couple of days I'm going to Walmart.
Yeah.
Again, you just walk around and it doesn't matter.
You're back. Hey man, you're back in the home of the free, home of the brave.
Exactly.
Land of the free.
It was just this incredible, crazy, mind-blowing experience of the difference, the reverse culture shock.
Right.
After a year of being away and of seeing what things have changed and what things have just stayed the same, even though my whole life in some ways has flipped upside down. At the same time, things were still stable here. Everything was fine here.
Right.
So it was just this crazy perspective. But in those 2 weeks as well, I was in contact with my service mission leader, who was setting up service assignments so that when I got back home, I could go straight back to work. And so since then, I've been serving as a service missionary. Although at the beginning, then too, right as I got home, of course, I got COVID. So. Right. Just how life goes.
You're like, see, you should be wearing a mask.
Yeah. No. But yeah, I mean, since then I've been serving as a service missionary, and it's been an amazing experience. Some very interesting similarities, like probably one of the biggest similarities is kind of distance between missionaries.
Okay.
Here we have there's 2 other service missionaries in my service mission.
Okay.
In the Jacksonville North service mission, and so they both live in Jacksonville, so it's about an 1.5-hour drive. So I don't see them. I just saw them for the first time, I think last week. We met up at an Olive Garden with the service mission leader and had like a district council sort of a thing. Right. Just kind of meet up and seeing each other in person for the first time. But that's after 6 months of being here, Right.
And so your service mission leader is not the mission president in the Jacksonville.
That's
North
true.
Mission.
So
right.
Currently that's how it works. I have heard, because I serve with the service missionary training program that they're working on developing. So I get to meet a lot of service missionaries who are just starting out or at various points during their service mission experience. One was talking about how they were piloting a program, I think in Nevada, or Arizona maybe, where the mission president, they did consolidate the 2 missions together. But currently, as it stands, service missions are a separate entity. And I'm under the ecclesiastical leadership of my stake president.
Right.
And I have a service mission leader who's in charge of the service mission and how the logistics, especially, of things.
Okay. So how do you think you have been... earlier, some of the things that you mentioned, some of the concerns is the perception, right, of coming home from a proselyting missionary, having maybe appearing as quote unquote failing, and now serving as finishing out as a service missionary. How has all that transpired for you? Do you see that? Do you feel that in any way?
I don't, honestly.
Okay.
It was an amazing feeling of realizing it's not that big a deal.
Right.
Nobody's looking, and that's what you learn over and over again, or that's what I've learned over and over again. It's like nobody's looking at you that closely.
Right.
No one's looking to judge you in that particular way. Of course, there's an interesting confusion about what service missions are. People just don't know. I didn't really know what it would be like beforehand, but there is a clear confusion about that sometimes. If I'm, wearing my name tag and wearing my suit in church, and I happen to be talking to the to our proselyting missionaries, then people will come and be like, "Oh, we're going to invite you 3. You guys are a trio. We're going to invite you 3 to dinner. I'll text you guys the details later." And of course, they're meaning they're going to text the missionaries and not me.
Right.
And that's totally fine. But it's just kind of funny. Just this modality. It's kind of like they don't even recognize that that I've been here for years.
That's funny.
In that moment, they're like, "Oh, it's a missionary."
That's funny, yeah.
Which is of course just the truth. I mean, I am just a missionary, but of course, if you make plans with them, you're not necessarily making plans with me.
Yeah. So, what are some of the things that you've been assigned to do as a service missionary?
So, the service missionary purpose kind of details out working with church functions and within the community as kind of the main 2 veins of service, at least consistent service. So, of course, I look out for kind of service projects and things to do on a daily basis that kind of just pop up, but those aren't consistent. Those won't, fill up time and things like that. So I've been working with the Okefenokee Heritage Center here, and working with them to digitize some stuff, like make a digital newsletter to get out the word on events and things like that for the Heritage Center, and then as well with the SMT program, so the Service Missionary Training Program. I've worked as a translator of materials from English into Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but they said if you're willing to try. So I was willing to try, so I did it. And I've been a facilitator, so a teacher of a class, for about 5 months now. So I've done about 4 different sessions, 4 3-week sessions as a facilitator. And it's been an amazing, amazing experience. As well, I've, I'll do family search, what do you call that? Genealogy work, or indexing and things like that, as well as then I've had the amazing opportunity since about February to work as a temple ordinance worker. So me and my mom go down about every 2 weeks to work in the temple, and it's an amazing, amazing opportunity. And that's probably the best thing going on is that. And sometimes I even forget to mention it because of course it's its own calling and things like that. But it's part of my service mission is I get to be able to do that. And then as well, I try to visit my grandpa who's in the nursing home a couple times a week, at least. We will normally try and visit him together on Sundays, me and my mom. But then I've been trying to visit him at least 2 or 3 times a week besides that, just to talk to him, because otherwise he doesn't, and I hadn't been able to see him for like over a year, and he's kind of stuck there, so.
So I was reading through some of the online, the church website about service missions and everything, and I really love this quote from President Russell M. Nelson. It says, through a lifetime of service in this church, I have learned that it really doesn't matter where one serves. What the Lord cares about is how one serves. And I think that's beautiful, because again, getting back to what I said earlier, everybody's situation is different. And and the Lord has many purposes for everyone, and there's those purposes need to be fulfilled one way or another. And how does He fulfill those purposes? He uses us. He uses his children to fulfill those services and everything. So you are, again, you're down to being released in November, right? And companionship. You don't have you're
so
here. Yeah.
So technically speaking, my parents, so my mom and my stepdad are my companions, but don't have sight and sound rules for them. Okay. They're at home or wherever they are if they decide to be anywhere else. Right. And so you can be, as a service missionary, you can be assigned a study companion. I have not, as of yet, engaged in that. But you can get a study companion if you would like one. So someone to arrange calls with, maybe, or to meet up with if you're able to meet up in person, and sort of do companionship study with, and things like that, and keep in contact with. But I haven't as of yet taken advantage of that opportunity.
Gotcha. I wanted to share with you. How long has I tried to find this. Do you know how long the service missionary opportunities have been around? I know it's only been in just a few years. I mean, I don't think it's been around for an excessively long time, but
it's been around, I think, longer than you would think.
We think. It's just okay,
because I think it was first launched, I want to say, in Arizona.
Okay.
At first, it was first launched out west. It was a very specific thing. I was talking in Brunswick, and he was talking about the Las Vegas mission piloting. Right. And a member, a fully adult member, I think maybe in his 40s or his 50s, was talking about how they had piloted the service mission program. And it looked very different back then, and it wasn't as well defined as it is now, and it probably was a totally different beast in some ways.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But it was there already. Probably about 30 years ago, and I know. I know there was at least one person that I remember hearing about who had moved out to Utah to serve as a service missionary, to be able to do that, because it just didn't exist out here.
Right. Okay.
Maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
But it had existed already out there. They're working now. It is nationwide, as far as I'm aware, and they're working to make it international as well. So that's
Gotcha.
been our impetus to translate it into Spanish, because we expect within the next couple of years to have Mexican service missions,
Right.
and to have South American service missions, and have even maybe German service missions, and have it worldwide. But as it currently stands, it's not.
Right.
So
kind of the reason I ask is because I had a companion on my mission that would have been a service mission would have been great for him. It would have been a great opportunity for him. He wanted so bad to be able to serve and fulfill in his 24-month assignment. I ended up serving with him for his last 4 months. He ended up serving a total of 20 months, and he was released honorably and everything, and went home at 20 months. But he had some serious anxiety issues, depression issues. I mean, so much so that he saw a therapist, professional therapist. I think it was maybe twice a month, where we would. And this is I was serving up and around Alamo area, but we would drive down to Las Vegas, which is a couple-hour drive, twice a month for him to meet with a therapist. He was required to work out with weights 3 times a week to help produce the endorphins and the chemicals and everything that body helps produce with doing physical exertion. And I ended up having several instances where he would just get really down on himself if he ever messed up a discussion. Like back then, we memorized everything, right, and we were in zone conference one day, and one of the mission president's counselor, I mean, he was he was having us recite, right, and he would go down the line, and we would have to recite it in order. The next paragraph. Got to him, completely couldn't remember it, and that was it. I mean, he tanked. So I took him outside, and we would go for runs. I mean, he would. I had to tackle him to keep from punching brick walls and stuff and everything. So it was he had a really, really hard time. However, much like you, he wanted to do good. He wanted to be able to fulfill his assignment and feel like that he wasn't letting the Lord down or his family down or anything like that. And so learning more about these service missionary opportunities and everything made me think a lot about him and the time that I spent with him, because it would have been great if it was around for him during that time and everything. So
definitely, I could imagine. Well, and I know there's so many, there's such a problem of even return missionaries who come home and go inactive.
Right.
And there are, those that are super active in the church but never serve missions. And it's always sort of interesting, isn't it?
Yes.
You see those people and you're like, and you'd be inclined to ask, so you didn't want to do that part of it, but you're faithful in every other aspect. And I think it comes down to that. If, when it's kind of in some ways one size fits all, at certain levels that's appropriate. At certain levels there's just not the resources to do otherwise. I can imagine in some places where they don't have that many members, you might only have 1 or 2 service missionaries, or people who would even make sense to be service missionaries. And what kind of infrastructure can you set up for that, and what kind of opportunities can you really make happen for that?
Right.
And so then, as the church is growing and growing and growing, I think there's a growing need for the youth for young adults to be able to serve missions, and sometimes that doesn't look exactly the same as how it has looked for many people. Of course, it's always been if you're willing and able, if you have the wish and you're able to, but questions of ability, especially of mental health, are fairly new in origin, as well as then now the opportunity to serve even if you have limited ability.
Right.
Really an amazing blessing, because of course beforehand it's something that just wasn't available for those with limited ability.
And that's with you mentioning that's that's kind of maybe a high hope that Amanda and I have with Lily. She loves to be social, right?
Yeah.
She loves to be out and helping people and doing things and everything. But she is limited in her abilities and everything, and so we're hoping that that she can have that opportunity and maybe want to have that opportunity to do a service mission and everything.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and two, I mean, it's super flexible is the other thing too. It's, for me, the expectation is to basically that's been set forth is to work the equivalent of a 40-hour work week. That's what kind of my goal is, because that's where my ability is. I can really, the reason why I'm home in some sense is because for the resources and the support, and I have resources and support, so I can do a whole lot.
Right.
For others who are either physically or otherwise incapable of working that much, can have lowered schedules, can work almost part-time as service missionaries.
Right.
And two, I know Reagan, right, within the Lord, has talked about, even, it's kind of funny, he will recognize me against the other missionaries as I'm the missionary who's allowed to watch TV, and the other ones are the missionaries who are not allowed to watch TV. If you have questions about that, you can look in the Service Missionary Handbook.
That's right.
It's some different rules, and it's an amazing thing because exactly, for different people, not being able to get serotonin can be a real big problem. Not being able to do the things that you enjoy in life can be a really big problem, which is something that I ran into. If I feel guilty for reading a book, like in my free time, what am I supposed to do? Like to feel those happy chemicals. If I'm not allowed to lift weights, then I have to stay. We had happy lamps, so it was these sunlight replicating lamps that were for especially the winter. I guess you could stare in one of those to try and get some serotonin or some sort of chemicals in your brain to activate. But still,
I tell you, that stuff makes a difference, man. I mean, it really does. There's a purpose for all that. So what would you say to individuals out there who are considering serving a mission, who are considering whether a service mission is right for them, and so forth, and maybe advice on if they are having some of those thoughts of feeling of failure or not living up to expectations and so forth. What would you say to those individuals?
I guess for the first type, the ones who are considering serving a mission and maybe have questions or maybe thinking about a service mission, I won't say this as an authority because I don't know how it is in all places, but as far as I understand it, talk to your stake president, talk to your bishop about it, and I believe that when they put in your recommendation, they can also recommend a service mission. Okay. So whether or not that necessarily, I don't think that necessarily forces them to assign you to a service mission, but it definitely puts in that recommendation for it, and starts you out on the right foot. I would also say as well, for those who feel like a failure, ultimately, it was an amazing thing coming back because I wasn't released and set apart as a service missionary. I was just transferred, and I got new name tags, but I mean, nobody took away my old name tags, right? And nothing happened. I'm still Elder Hatcher, and that hasn't changed. Of course, most people around here know my first name, so they call me by my first name. So it's a little bit hard to implement. But ultimately, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, is like how we understand it as members as well. Of course, every member a missionary. And now with the service missionary program, what does that mean? That means not every member is going to look exactly the same. Not every member, well, I don't know barely any members who have a proselytizing routine, trying to knock on doors or approach people on the street. And so in that same exact way, the most important thing is that we're all parts of the body of Christ. The proselytizing missionaries might be the mouth of Christ, just like the apostles. They have an apostolic calling to be the mouths of Christ. And a lot of the times I think we might be the feet. Might, I think especially service missionaries, we might be the hands of Christ. We can be the arms that hug. We can be the hearts that love. We can be all the different parts of Christ. And the body of Christ is not the body without the parts. And really none of them is higher than the others, even if the mouth gets to be louder and get all the attention. And in Corinthians it even talks about some of them are more comely, some of them look nicer and are better to look at. That does not speak badly of the other parts of the body who are less comely, though. They are just as worthy of being in the body.
And what is the body? Or the body is all connected, right?
Exactly.
It's all hands are connected. What's that primary song? Knees, elbows, whatever.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's great. Do you have anything else that's on your mind or that you would like to share?
I guess ultimately one thing that's been probably the saving grace for me is just trusting in the Lord that this is the plan.
Okay.
Even I talk about the pride that I have, maybe the righteous pride like you kind of were thinking, but I kind of wish that I'd had humility sooner and had asked with a true intent to know, even if I would have spent the same time. I think I'm glad that I spent the time that I did. I wouldn't take a single day off of it. At the same time, I kind of wish that I had been able to enjoy more of it.
Right.
And
okay.
at the end, I hadn't been in such a state of anxiety and panic about it. And really, ultimately, I think it's an amazing thing.
You say kind of what I'm taking from that is almost letting go and trusting in the Lord sooner than what you ended up.
Exactly.
Letting go.
Like, don't think that because of your initial call or because of what normally will happen, that has anything to do with the Lord's plan. The Lord's plan is not about what usually happens. It's about what's necessary for you to grow.
I like that.
And
that's great.
Really, that's it.
Very good. Well, again, thank you so much for coming in and sitting down with me for a little over an hour now. We have a tagline, right? Keep on striving, and I think you have you've implemented that, you've embodied that, you've exemplified that phrase with sharing this the experience that you've had. I mean, you literally have continued to strive to do what the Lord would have you do as you've gone from your proselyting mission to now as a service missionary, and will complete your 24 hour. Huh? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah,
your 24 month
day long.
That's right. Please. Yeah, your 24-month missionary assignment, as you made clear at the beginning. So. Again, Elder Hatcher, thank you so much. We wish you the best for your remaining few months on your mission.
Thank you.
And everyone out there listening, until next time, y'all keep on striving.
Yep, y'all keep on striving.
There you go.